Today, I just kind of wanted to have a very casual conversation about your, your approach on social media. As I shared with you when I reached out, or as you probably know, I really enjoy the content you share. I've been following you for some years now, and it's been really great to see how things have progressed and evolved and like just caught on with your audience growing even more. And I shared a post a while back which resonated with a lot of people, just about social media being about connecting with people and, having two-way communication versus just putting stuff out there that you think people want to see. And yeah, so being Women's Month, I figured I would chat to a number of the women that that I have connected with through social media purely, and just finding out what happens behind the scenes, I guess, in them choosing the content that they share, in their process, and how that's evolved over time. Because obviously you don't just start on day one with this awesome plan that just works out. Yeah. So that's really what this is about. I'm hoping that people that watch it will be able to, learn from it. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So I guess to start it off, it would be, I've always been curious as to why you chose the Modern Zulu Mom, and sharing what you intended the platform to be when you started it and how that's kind of changed over time, if it has.
Firstly, I think social media has been such a great space for me to build those connections. I mean, like you and I found each other, and although you're not a mom, it's just been, I still relate to so much of what you share, and, vice versa. And I think it's so important to have that intention and to kind of like have your plan, but also, just stay open to the possibilities. And I think, so when I started Modern Zulu Mom, for me, it was, the original thinking was, I've got the way I came into parenting looks very different to everyone else. For example, I had two of my kids before I got married, and I didn't really find similar stories online. And that's essentially why I started this page. And as well, I was just looking for, when you want ideas and when you want to start the different processes, like when your child's starting to go to school, or when you have a new baby and they're not sleeping, I just wanted to share what worked for me, and find similar people online.
I get that. And I think I've learned a lot. What I love is, as much as you share a lot about your family, and your children, you also share a lot of content that it can speak to somebody who doesn't have children, because it's very relevant, speaking to your relationships and all of that. So I hear you. One thing that in what you said just now, did you have a plan when you started? Because obviously most people say, okay, I'm going to come on, or maybe back then not so much, but now it's like, okay, I'm going to start a blog and it's going to be like this. I'm going to talk about these topics. Were you clear on the topics you were going to speak to, or were you kind of winging it as you went along? Yeah, and was there something?
Definitely winging it.
Okay.
I was definitely winging it. This was, I think I started my current page 5 years ago. And I mean, I think I almost want to say there was less pressure at the time, and it was just share what's kind of working for you, and I was like, okay, whatever I'm using, whatever I'm doing with my kids, I'm just going to share it. So I definitely didn't have a plan initially. However, I think as times have evolved, it actually helps you as a content creator to have a plan, and to plan your content in a certain way.
Okay. In what you've shared with your being a mom, have you experienced any backlash at all? I've seen a lot of people deal with cyberbullying, so to speak, and I guess people having opposing views to what you're doing, or people saying you shouldn't do it in this way, or put your children out in this way, or whatever. Have you experienced any of that? I found I personally haven't experienced so much. I feel I haven't experienced it so much. I feel the energy I put out kind of has come back to some degree. But have you faced that in any way? Yeah.
So I think if it's been subtle enough for me not to feel it directly. But there are people. I mean, people have different opinions, and we all parent differently. Some people choose not to put their children on social media, whereas I choose to put my children on social media, or to share some parts of our life on social media. So I definitely experience and see the bullying and the negative attitudes online all the time. And I try to distance myself from it personally, and also not to take things personally. I think if something is not working for you, so if I'm following someone and I no longer resonate with their content, I prefer to just remove myself instead of putting any sort of negative energy towards them, or yeah, I just move on.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's always going to be those kind of subtle issues, especially because it's just as human beings, we make decisions differently, and our personal preferences will always, the head will spring up. And so I think it's important just to also be mindful of who you're following, who's following you, and just kind of check yourself.
So with that, I guess the other thing that I really enjoy is the approach you take in the partnerships that you do or have or take on. I'm not sure which one applies, but with brands, whether it's sponsored or whether it's brands that you just love and have found in your journey, but especially those that are sponsored, because I think a lot of new people coming into blogging, their aim is to live that life of getting brands and getting paid to create content, or getting paid to essentially live their life. And I wanted to find out when in your journey you started taking on paid collaborations. So just to give people an idea of, I don't know how long it can take. Definitely we started way sooner than, influencer marketing caught on, but just when in your journey you took this on, and how you decide which brands to work with, because I'm sure you get approached by a lot out there. Yeah, okay, I have quite a few questions on that.
Okay, sure. So I think I'll just start off with like when I started working with brands. So this is my second blog. So I've been blogging for about 10 years, but just if we look at just Modern Zulu Mom, I think in the first 2 years of me starting to share my content is when I started getting paid. So before that, I would get gifts and I would share, information kind of like for free or in exchange for the gift. And then, so I think I started getting paid collaborations 2 years into my journey. And I do see that as well. Like I do see a lot of new content creators, reaching out, wanting to find out, how can I get, paid campaigns. And I feel like for me, you should kind of like carry on living your life and sharing genuinely, and let the brands that want to work with you and fit into your living your life kind of approach you. And it almost feels, sometimes harsh to say that, but I think it's really, really important to not create content with brands in mind, but to create your story. And that's what social media is about. We're all sharing our individual stories and, different parts of our lives. And, then naturally, I feel like the brands that can then fit into that, and the audience that follows you, it will then kind of like naturally and authentically flow, as opposed to you, creating with attracting brands in mind.
No, definitely. So how do you approach any brands to work with them, or is it always them reaching out to you?
So a lot of the time I do have brands reaching out to me, but there have been specific brands or collaborations where, you know, I've got an idea and I've got a relationship with a brand. I think that's also another important part of working with brands that's quite important. It's not a take. It's, you know, kind of like it's a two-way street. And you kind of give to the brand and they give to you. And I think it's really, really important to work on those relationships so that when I do have ideas, I am able to pitch them. And, you know, that's something that I'm working on. I'm not a pro or anything, but I have leveraged the relationships that I have to work on different things.
Okay. Okay, cool. Okay, so there's been a whole lot of conversation of late about influences of color getting paid less and all of that. What can I ask what your view is of that? And what have you had any personal experiences that you think that fell into that category, I guess, that you were at a disadvantage because of the color of your skin?
So I think a lot happens behind the scenes that I was or am not always aware of. And I think the conversations that have happened recently have just opened up, I think a whole lot of crucial conversations that have needed to happen for a very long time. And I think as people of color, we almost experience this discrimination at different levels, almost in like every area of our lives. So it's an exhausting battle to take on. And I think, you know, what the view that I've taken is like, okay, what can I do? I always want to take action, you know, and I've now thought and deliberately focused on, if I get approached by a brand, make sure that, you know, you look at that brand, you look at what they're already sharing on social media. Are they diverse? And also, if I can't take on that job, let me, you know, consciously pass it on to another influencer of color, you know, just to share the space. And I think that becomes really important for me to say, okay, how can I do it? Because sometimes I feel like if we talk all the time and without the action, you know, and I think with brands that I do have a relationship with, it is easy for me to you know, to have those conversations, and I have had some of them behind the scenes as well.
Yeah.
To say like,
yeah.
how can we fix this together, and how can we level the playing field, because it is an issue.
I hear you, and I think an important thing that you said there is us taking action, because having conversations about things doesn't really bring change. It's us playing a part of, or saying, okay, so what can I do that can, you know, add 2 cents? It won't necessarily alleviate the problem completely and transform the landscape, but I can recommend a person that I know will, you know, do the things that they need to and best deliver on what this brand wants and fits in, you know, because I guess a lot of the problem as was people who are in positions maybe just don't know, or they haven't done their research, or so I get, not that that's an excuse, of course, but
I think it's easy to go with, you know, the influences that you know, or, you know, that you've always worked with. And I think it's quite important in, you know, leading leading with diversity is to say, try new influences, try macro influences, there's so many people of color, we're the majority in our country. So, you know, there really is no excuse why we shouldn't be getting opportunities.
Definitely. I think that you hit the nail on the head right there. A lot of people, it's also, I guess, kind of tricky, because a lot of people get just complacent in reaching out to the influencers or people that they know, that are known, that have large audiences, and it's the same people getting the same campaigns. It takes a whole lot more work for a person to go and research and say, okay, let's take a different approach. Let's, you know, work with people that haven't worked with brands. And, you know, I guess it's also kind of a risk in a way, because you don't know the return that you might get. You don't know if people will listen to that person. And you also, I guess, want to be cool and work with the people who are relevant at the time. So yeah, there's definitely some laziness in that as well. So you mentioned that you had a blog before this, because you've 10 years in the game. What was that blog about, and how come it didn't make it?
I think I've just always been passionate about writing. So I wanted I initially studied journalism, and then I changed and I studied corporate communication. So I've always loved writing. I dreamt of working at Cosmopolitan. I thought I wanted to be a magazine journalist. And for me, the way that my career steered after university didn't go quite as I planned. So I just started writing and sharing. So my first blog was around events that I'd go to, the things that are happening around Joburg. And yeah, it's, looking back, it is very embarrassing. And I think a lot of people then, and it's important to talk about this because we feel awkward around what we've shared before. And we all need to start somewhere, so for new content creators, I always say that I still get nervous around creating content. And, I wonder whether it will resonate if I do this post and you've worked so hard to get the picture, or you've worked so hard to create the messaging around what you share. And it is kind of intimidating to put yourself out there. And, sometimes you look back on some of the stuff that you've done and you cringe. But I think it's important for us to share that we've all been there. And just because I've been creating for X number of years, it doesn't mean that, I still don't have anxieties or worry about whether what I'm sharing is relevant and whether it will resonate with other people. So I think that's quite an important point to bring up.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's also, my partner likes saying, never despise the day of small beginnings. Those things that we cringe looking back on did form, the groundworks of all that we learned. And it may not seem like it at the time, but I guess it's because I also before all that I'm doing now with Afredigital and Afredigital, there was Through Shaded Eyes. And before that, for like a year or so, there was Rosebank Land. That does sound corny, but I lived in Rosebank, and I pretty much spoke to all that happened. There were all those clubs there, and I would go to the mall and take like street style shots because the sartorialist was the hot thing at the time. I'm not sure now, but I was just like, okay, we're gonna have the South African sartorialist, and this is so. But all of those things do like build you and teach you a lot, and we take those things for granted. Hey?
Exactly. They add up to your experience at the end of the day. I mean, no one starts off perfectly, and I think a lot of people worry about that. How do you take the perfect picture, or how do you actually? They want to be where you are now, and I think that it's important to learn those lessons, to fail, and to not always get it right. And I still don't always get it right, and I think it's so important for us to share that and not like discard where we come from.
Yeah, definitely. So speaking of not always getting it right, obviously as you started, back to the Modern Zulu Mom, you tried some things, you tested some things. How did you? Was it just you sharing what you feel and seeing what resonated, and then seeing which are received well? And now that you figured out what is received well, do you still try out new things or share new things? How has that process like been over time in you deciding what content you put out and what content you stop maybe putting out?
So I think in terms of like in social media, I'm quite comfortable to share what's on my heart at the time, and I think I try not to stress too much around what I think will resonate well or not, because I think there's always going to be someone that relates to some extent. But I think with blogging, I think that's it's quite difficult there to get it right for me. I find it like a lot of people are more into the scrolling on social media as opposed to dedicating their time to read a blog post. So I'm quite I do quite a lot of thinking around blog posts, and I look at the readership and, the views and how that, whether it's gone well or not. And I try then to steer my posts in a way that, that's similar kind of themings or different story types or I don't even know what to call it. But I just kind of try to pick up on the types of posts that resonate then with more people and try to build on that. I don't know why people are not reading as much these days. I suppose social media's made it a little bit lazy. But I think in terms of sharing on social media, like it's important not to try and like overthink things. Yes, have your strategy and see what kind of works, but it's also important to try different things and not share with the I don't know, I think it's important to just share authentically. That's what I'm trying to say, and
just be real.
Not focus too much on what will work and what will not work.
I get that. It's also being I guess enjoying it to some degree, because if that's all you're doing,
because it
takes the fun out of it.
Consumes your personal life, you know what I mean? Like, and like, you don't want your social media platform to be another job. It kind of needs to. It's a part of your life that you share, and we all share what we want to share. And I think that it's important to enjoy it and not, make it such a big task that you're anxious about it, or
definitely agree. What would you say has been the highlight of your blogging career or your journey?
Definitely relationships. I mean, like the conversations that happen in my DMs are just, they fuel me up, honestly, because for me, I wanted to create a space where moms feel like they are okay, like they belong, they are good enough, they are, they in doing their best, it's okay to fail. And for me, when I get a message saying, you know what, I went through that and I felt so bad, but after I saw your post, I felt normal. Like that for me is like, and that's it. And I hope that I'll always be true to that. And that's why I've constantly mentioned, being as real as you can and being authentic as you can, and just sharing the story that is yours, because you never know who you're touching. I can't be Tukelo and Tukelo can't be me, and that is okay. And the people that will resonate with you and your story are the people that will stick to you. Don't worry about your numbers. Of course, like celebrate, and if you want to start working with brands, work towards it. But I think for me, it's the relationships and why we're having this conversation even, we've never met in person, but the first time I spoke to you, it felt natural because we've been engaging with each other on social media. And when I then, take some of the events that I have offline and we meet in person with these moms, we feel like we've known each other for so long, and that's what it's all about for me.
Oh, that's so awesome. That is beautiful. I think one thing that you mentioned, just having purpose behind your platform, seems to have really driven everything. You mentioned just creating a safe space for moms to share and engage, and that's really all that everything you've done has been for that. All of your content, I'm guessing, and I think that's really awesome. What would you say would be the biggest challenge you faced in this journey?
I think for me, it's definitely been the consistency, and it's just because I've got a whole lot happening in my life. There's 3 kids, there's a full-time job, you're a friend, you're a mom, you're a wife. So I think now and then I take those dips when I'm not as consistent. But I think, overall, I just want to enjoy this, and I'm just trying to think if there's anything else that I've really, really found challenging. I think when there's the creative juices aren't flowing,
Mm.
that's definitely like, and you're just like, oh, I don't know, you may have a certain content plan, but it may not work with that week that you're having or the other things that are happening around your life. So I think that's also one of the challenges when you just like, I'm feeling uninspired. Should I
Yeah.
stop? Should I keep going?
Mm.
And yeah, and I think you also you want to add value. I mean, I appreciate all people that are in my tribe, and I do want to add value to their lives at the end of the day. So I think sometimes I do stifle on the creative part, and then I'm like, a bit stuck.
So how do you overcome that feeling stuck creatively when you just are feeling like what you wanted to share this week, it doesn't feel like it's real, or it would be the right thing to speak to, so
Yeah.
I don't know what actually to say. What do you do in that time?
I step back and I actually won't post that day, or if I'm and I'm feeling like, okay, this is not a fit for me, I'll either not put myself under pressure to create a post for that day, or yeah, I'll browse on Pinterest. I love looking at inspirational images or inspirational kind of like messaging, and I think as another thing that I do is just share what is happening that day. Simply do that, and it doesn't have to be the most amazing or the most I don't know, inspirational post, I guess, for that time. But I guess it just gets me in the flow again.
Mm.
Whether if I say, okay, let me look back, what is happening today? Okay, let me share that, and just move on without putting myself under the pressure to create something amazing. Or I just step back for the day, take a couple of days offline, and then come back.
I get that. I guess we kind of feel like every post needs to be like a chart-topping hit sensation with everyone, but I guess
A cute
that's not
kid.
the case. And I hear you.
Break.
What?
I was just saying, sometimes a photo of a cute kid is just the break I need, and then come back.
You see, you at least you have that. I mean, and I asked that question because I experience that. I feel that sometimes, especially I think more so nowadays, or since taking on managing a number of other platforms as well, or pages. So you at the end of the day, you're kind of spent creating content plans and doing all the stuff for everybody else, and then when it comes to you, you're just like, oh wow. And it's I think just that approach that what you just mentioned is just so true, that you just need to keep it simple. Sometimes we overthink these things, and wanting to do the most and say something that everybody will be like, oh wow, that is just so awesome, but it could just be as simple as just sharing what you're going through and just having a normal day, and keeping it simple. So yeah, no, I unfortunately don't have a cute baby to share, but I might maybe just borrow a picture of my niece or something. That's a good idea. Okay. Okay, cool. So I don't want this to be too long. So I just have one more question, which is, if you were to give advice to any newbie, new to social media, new to blogging, yeah, what would it be?
I think find the thing that you really love, so that everything you share comes from that place that where that's anchored, and once you are okay with people not, I guess, once you're okay with sharing freely, as yourself and as your story, you'll be surprised, I guess, at the number of people that will actually resonate with what you share. So I think finding that thing that you're passionate about, that isn't driven or influenced by what anyone else is sharing, is a game changer. Because at the end of the day, the ideas will come, the creativity will come, and you'll always be inspired to keep sharing. Don't do it because of someone else you've seen, and don't be shy, and don't think that you don't have anything of value to add, because you do. You do. I mean, your story, you would think that it's so unique, and there are people that will, bounce off on and relate to one or two things that you share. So keep going, and even on days where you feel like no one is supporting you, go the next day and try something else, try something new. And over time you'll look back, like we're saying, like, we're looking back at our old blogs and the old things that we used to share, and they've contributed to where we are today. So don't worry too much about what people think, as long as you are genuine and you putting the best that you can do out there. That's good enough.
That's great. Thank you for that, and thank you for your time. I really appreciate it, and it's been awesome just connecting with you in real virtual life. Okay, cool. Well, have an awesome day, I guess. Bye.